My name is Claire Henderson, and I'm 25 years old. The day my father called my psychology degree worthless was the day I decided to prove him wrong in the most undeniable way possible. You spent 4 years studying feelings, Dad said, setting down his beer with enough force to make the patio table shake. Meanwhile, your brother studied something useful. Thanksgiving had just ended, but the warmth of family gathering had evaporated the moment he'd asked about my career. My twin brother Austin smirked from across the table, his finance degree practically radiating Dad's approval. Mom squeezed my hand under the table, her silent apology for a scene we'd lived through countless times. I sat quietly, my laptop bag hidden in my car containing contracts Dad knew nothing about. 3 corporate clients, a consulting retainer worth 6 figures, a bank account that would shock him speechless, but he couldn't know yet. Not until Christmas morning, when I'd hand him the deed to his house, paid in full, courtesy of the useless degree he loved to mock. I grew up in Riverside, a working-class town where practical meant everything and dreams meant nothing. My father, Tom Henderson, worked construction for 30 years, building other people's houses while struggling to keep ours. He measured success in visible results. Walls built, roofs shingled, paychecks deposited. My mother, Beth, managed the books for local businesses, her accounting skills keeping our family afloat during lean construction seasons. She'd always been practical too, but with a gentleness Dad lacked. Austin followed their practical path perfectly. Finance degree from State University, analyst position at an investment firm, apartment in the city with granite countertops. He posted constantly on social media. He was everything Dad wanted in a son. Then there was me, the soft one, the emotional one, the daughter who wanted to understand why people hurt instead of just telling them to get over it. I'd chosen psychology over business, therapy over trading, helping people heal over helping them profit. Dad had barely attended my graduation, his disappointment written across his face every time someone asked what I'd do with such an impractical degree. But what nobody knew was that I'd built something extraordinary. Corporate psychology consulting, Dad continued, his voice dripping with skepticism. That's not even a real job, Claire. Companies don't pay people to talk about emotions. Actually, they do, I said quietly. But you've never asked me about the details. Austin jumped in, always ready to support Dad's narrative. Come on, sis. Be realistic. How much can feelings consulting possibly pay? 50,000? 60. I bit my tongue hard enough to taste copper. Try 350,000 this year, I thought. But saying that now would sound offensive, like I was scrambling to justify choices they'd already condemned. So I stayed silent, the secret burning in my chest like swallowed fire. The truth was, I'd spent 3 years building a corporate psychology consulting practice that Fortune 500 companies paid premium rates to access. I helped organizations address workplace culture issues, reduce employee turnover, improve leadership communication, and resolve team conflicts. My client list included tech giants, pharmaceutical companies, and financial institutions. The same types of companies Austin worked for, except they paid me 5 times his salary to fix their broken cultures. But Dad couldn't see past his narrow definition of valuable work. 2 months earlier, during a routine call with Mom, the conversation had drifted to their finances. She'd mentioned casually that Dad's back problems were getting worse, that construction work was becoming harder, that retirement felt simultaneously necessary and impossible. We still owe $75,000 on the house, she'd sighed. Tom refinanced 5 years ago to pay for both your college educations. The new terms weren't great, but we needed the money for you kids. The guilt had hit me immediately. Dad had extended his financial strain to fund my psychology degree, the degree he now called worthless. While he'd been sacrificing, going into debt, working despite chronic pain, I'd been quietly building wealth he refused to acknowledge. That night, I'd checked my savings account. $420,000, accumulated through 3 years of aggressive saving and high-paying corporate contracts. More than enough to pay off their mortgage and still maintain substantial security. The idea had crystallized instantly. I'd pay off the house as a Christmas gift, completely anonymously through the bank at first, then revealed in person. The look on Dad's face when his impractical daughter freed him from debt would be worth every dismissive comment I'd endured. "I'm doing fine, Dad," I said, keeping my voice level despite the anger simmering underneath. "Fine isn't enough. You should be thriving. You should have a real career with benefits and advancement opportunities." He leaned forward, his construction-weathered hands flat on the table. "It's not too late to go back to school, get an MBA, or something practical." "I don't need an MBA. I have clients. I have a business." "A business?" He said it like I'd claimed to have a unicorn. "Claire, running a website and seeing a few clients isn't a business. It's a side hustle at best." Austin nodded along, enjoying the lecture that wasn't aimed at him for once. "Dad's right. You need something stable. What happens during a recession? Companies cut consulting first." "Then I guess I'll find out," I said quietly, standing to clear plates. Mom followed me into the kitchen, her expression pained. "Your father means well. He just worries." "He doesn't worry. He judges. There's a difference." I rinsed dishes with more force than necessary, the water scalding my hands. "He's never once asked what I actually do. He just decided it's worthless and nothing I say will change his mind." "So show him," Mom said softly. "Show him you're successful." Her words echoed as I drove home that night, my hands tight on the steering wheel. Show him. That's exactly what I planned to do. The next morning, I contacted their mortgage company, navigating through automated systems until I reached a real person who could help. "I'd like a payoff quote for account number." I read off the information Mom had inadvertently mentioned during our call. The representative confirmed the details. $75,147, good through December 31st. I scheduled a meeting with my attorney to ensure everything was legal and properly documented. She reviewed my plan with approval. "This is incredibly generous, Claire. Your parents are fortunate." "My father thinks I'm a failure," I said bluntly. "This will prove otherwise." She smiled. "It'll do more than that. Financial freedom is priceless, especially for people approaching retirement." Over the following weeks, I worked with obsessive focus. I took on an extra consulting project with a pharmaceutical company addressing a workplace harassment situation. The project paid $80,000 for 6 weeks of intensive work. Combined with my existing retainer clients, my income for November alone exceeded what Dad made in 6 months. I designed the reveal carefully. I'd create a custom presentation, something that showcased both the gift and the work that made it possible. A portfolio book showing my corporate clients the problems I'd solved, the impact I'd created, culminating in the paid-off mortgage deed. Art and evidence combined. Proof Dad couldn't dismiss. By mid-December, everything was in place. The wire transfer was scheduled for December 20th. The attorney had prepared all documentation. I designed a leather-bound presentation book that told the story of my career in a way that even Dad couldn't ignore. The book opened with my graduate thesis on organizational psychology, then case studies from my consulting work, with client names redacted but results quantified. Employee retention increased by 43%. Leadership satisfaction scores improved by 67%. Workplace conflict reduced by 58%. Numbers Dad would understand. Each page demonstrated value, impact, measurable results. The psychology he dismissed had generated millions in saved costs for organizations, and they'd paid me handsomely for that value. The final page held a pocket for the mortgage deed with a simple inscription, "To Dad, who taught me the value of hard work." This is what that lesson built. The house is yours, free and clear. Merry Christmas. December 20th arrived cold and gray. I sat in my home office, cursor hovering over the wire transfer authorization button. $75,147. One click would empty a significant portion of my savings. One click would prove everything I'd been saying for 3 years. One click would change Dad's retirement completely. I clicked. The confirmation screen appeared. Transfer initiated. Funds would be withdrawn from my account within 24 hours. Applied to the mortgage within 48 hours. Done. Irreversible. Real. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. 3 years of saving, of building, of enduring Dad's skepticism, all culminating in this single transaction. That evening, Mom called to confirm Christmas plans. You're still coming, right? Even after Thanksgiving? I wouldn't miss it, I assured her. Good. Your father's been quieter than usual. I think he feels bad about what he said. He should. Claire. I'm coming, Mom. I promise. And I'm bringing a gift that's going to change everything. Christmas Eve arrived with unexpected snow, the kind of perfect holiday weather that felt almost scripted. I loaded the presentation book into my car along with smaller wrapped gifts, my heart hammering against my ribs, hard enough to hurt. Austin's truck was already in the driveway when I arrived. Through the window, I could see the family gathered around the fireplace, warm and comfortable, completely unaware their financial situation was about to transform. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, building courage. This was it. After 3 years of quiet success and loud criticism, I was about to prove myself in the most undeniable way possible. Mom opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a hug that smelled like cinnamon and pine. I'm so glad you're here. Tom's been watching the door all evening. Inside, Dad sat in his recliner, the worn leather chair he'd owned since before I was born. He looked older than I remembered from Thanksgiving, the construction years showing in his stooped shoulders and careful movements. Claire. He stood slowly, his back clearly bothering him. Hey, Dad. We hugged awkwardly, both uncertain after the Thanksgiving tension. Austin and his girlfriend, Melissa, greeted me from the couch, their matching Christmas sweaters somehow both adorable and irritating. Christmas Eve dinner passed, pleasantly enough. We talked about Austin's latest promotion, Melissa's nursing program, Mom's book club selection. Safe topics that wouldn't trigger conflict. Dad asked how my consulting thing was going, the question carrying just enough skepticism to sting despite his obvious effort to be supportive. It's going well, I said, simply not elaborating. Tomorrow would do the talking. After dinner, we watched a Christmas movie together, the family tradition as comfortable as breathing. I sat between Mom and Dad on the couch, feeling simultaneously at home and like I was waiting for a bomb to detonate. Around midnight, Austin and Melissa left for her parents' house. Mom started cleaning up, and Dad retreated to the garage, probably to escape the holiday emotions he'd never known how to handle. I helped Mom with dishes, the warm water and rhythmic motion soothing my jangled nerves. You're nervous, she observed, handing me a plate to dry. Big day tomorrow. Every Christmas is big. This one's different. I can feel it. She studied my face. What are you planning, sweetheart? You'll see in the morning. It's a surprise. She didn't push, just smiled and returned to washing. But I caught her glancing at me several times, mother's intuition clearly on high alert. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. I'd barely slept, my mind running through the reveal on an endless loop, imagining reactions ranging from tears to anger to disbelief. Austin arrived early with Melissa, both carrying bags of wrapped presents. We gathered in the living room, coffee and pastries spread across Mom's antique coffee table, the tree lights casting shadows across familiar walls I'd grown up with. We took turns opening gifts. Austin gave Dad a new drill set. Mom received a spa package from Melissa. I'd brought smaller gifts for everyone, personalized items that showed I'd been paying attention to their interests. Dad held his gift, a leather journal for tracking his workshop projects. This is nice, Claire. Really thoughtful. I know you like documenting your builds. Thought you might use it. I will. He smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. But the main event waited. After regular gifts were distributed, I retrieved the large wrapped package from my car. It was heavy, the presentation book and documentation substantial. I set it in front of my parents. This is for both of you, but especially you, Dad. He looked confused. Claire, you already gave me something. You didn't need to get us anything else. Just open it, please. Dad's hands, scarred from decades of construction work, trembled slightly as he unwrapped the package. The leather-bound book emerged, its cover embossed with simple words. Building success, a different kind of construction. He opened it slowly, Mom leaning over his shoulder to see. The first page showed my graduate degree, matted professionally with my thesis title visible. Organizational Psychology, Building Healthy Workplace Cultures Through Evidence-Based Intervention. They turned pages slowly, taking in each case study. The tech company where I'd reduced turnover by 43%, saving them $6 million in recruitment and training costs. The pharmaceutical firm where I'd mediated a leadership conflict that threatened a crucial product launch. The financial institution where I'd redesigned their culture assessment process, improving employee satisfaction by 67%. Each page included client testimonials, quantified results, payment receipts with amounts visible. $30,000 for a 6-week project. $50,000 for a 3-month retainer. $80,000 for crisis intervention consulting. Austin leaned forward, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock. Claire, these are major corporations. You worked with all of these companies. I currently work with all of them. These are ongoing client relationships, plus project-based work that comes through referrals. Dad's hands shook harder as he turned pages. These payment amounts. This is real. They paid you this much. Yes. Corporate psychology. Consulting commands premium rates because we solve expensive problems. Employee turnover, workplace conflicts, leadership failures. These issues cost companies millions. They pay well for effective solutions. They reached the final page. The pocket containing the mortgage deed. Mom pulled it out slowly, her hands trembling now too, unfolding the official document with the bank's stamp clearly visible. Her gasp filled the quiet room. Tom, this says the mortgage is paid in full. She looked up at me, tears already streaming down her face. Claire, what is this? I paid off your mortgage. The entire $75,000. The house is completely yours now, no more payments. The silence that followed felt like the moment before lightning strikes. Dad stared at the deed, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Shock, confusion, disbelief, something that looked almost like anger before settling into something else entirely. You paid off $75,000. His voice cracked. How? My work. The useless psychology degree. I kept my voice gentle, not wanting this to feel like revenge, even though part of me desperately wanted him to feel the weight of his dismissiveness. I've been building my consulting practice for 3 years. Last year, I made $350,000. This year, I'll clear $400,000. The numbers landed like physical blows. Austin's mouth literally fell open. Melissa covered hers with both hands. Mom sobbed openly, no longer trying to hold back tears. Dad just stared at me, the deed still clutched in his construction-scarred hands. $400,000, Dad repeated, as if saying it aloud would help him process the impossible information. From talking to people about their feelings. From helping organizations solve complex human problems that affect their bottom line, I corrected. From applying psychological research to workplace challenges. From understanding that feelings aren't separate from productivity, they're fundamental to it. I pulled out my phone, opening my consulting website, showing them client testimonials, before and after metrics, case studies with identifying details removed but results clearly documented. This is what I do, Dad. This is what the useless degree built. And it paid well enough that I could save $75,000 while still maintaining substantial savings for my own security. Dad set the deed down carefully, like it might shatter if handled roughly. You've been making this kind of money for 3 years. Yes. And you let us think you were struggling, that you were barely making it. The question carried hurt beneath the confusion. I tried to tell you, multiple times, but every time I mentioned my work, you dismissed it. You'd already decided psychology was worthless, so nothing I said would change your mind. My voice remained level, but the emotion underneath was raw. So I stopped trying to convince you. I decided to show you instead. Austin shook his head slowly, still processing. You're making 4 times what I make, with a psychology degree. He looked at Dad. She's making more than both of you combined. Ever. The reality seemed to hit Dad then, the full weight of how wrong he'd been, how completely he'd misjudged his daughter's path. He stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the backyard where he'd taught Austin and me to throw a baseball decades ago. His shoulders shook. Mom followed, touching his back gently, whispering something too soft for me to hear. The moment stretched uncomfortably. Melissa looked uncertain whether to stay or leave. Austin stared at the presentation book like it might contain answers to questions he hadn't known to ask. I sat frozen on the couch, unsure whether I'd just given the best gift of my life or ruined Christmas irreparably. Finally, Dad turned around. Tears tracked down his weathered face, something I'd seen maybe twice in 25 years. When Mom died, when his own father passed. I'm sorry, Claire. His voice broke completely. I'm so goddamn sorry. He crossed the room, pulling me up from the couch into a hug that felt like it might break both of us. I was wrong about everything. Your degree, your career, your choices. All of it. I was wrong and cruel and blind. Dad, I started, but he shook his head. No, let me say this. I need to say this. He pulled back, hands on my shoulders, tears still flowing. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was pushing you toward security because I love you and I didn't want you to struggle like I did. His voice shook, but I was just scared. Scared of what I didn't understand. Scared that if success didn't look like my narrow definition of it, it wasn't real. I know you were trying to help. But I wasn't helping. I was hurting you. Every time I dismissed your work, every time I called your degree useless, every time I compared you unfavorably to Austin, I was damaging the relationship with my daughter because I couldn't see past my own limited worldview. Mom joined the hug, the 3 of us standing in the middle of the living room while Austin and Melissa watched with matching expressions of shock. You paid off our mortgage, Dad continued, his voice rough. You gave us freedom from 8 more years of payments. You did that with the degree I mocked. You did that while I was actively discouraging you. He shook his head. I don't deserve this gift. I don't deserve your generosity after how I've treated you. Yes, you do. You worked yourself into chronic pain to pay for my education. You refinanced your house so Austin and I could go to college. You sacrificed everything for us. I wiped my own tears. I wanted to do the same. I wanted to show you that my path was different, but not wrong. That success comes in forms you didn't recognize. Dad laughed, the sound wet and broken. Different, but not wrong. God, Claire, you're not just successful. You're extraordinary. You built something from nothing while everyone doubted you. That takes courage I'm not sure I've ever had. The admission seemed to cost him something, acknowledging that his daughter possessed strengths he lacked. But the honesty in it, the raw vulnerability, meant more than any amount of praise ever could. Austin stood, approaching slowly. I owe you an apology too, sis. I went along with Dad's criticism. I acted like my finance degree made me superior. He looked genuinely ashamed. But you've built something I never could. You created your own path, your own success, your own security. I'm still climbing a ladder someone else built. You constructed your own. The shift in family dynamics felt tectonic. Austin questioning his corporate path. Dad admitting his narrow thinking. Mom openly crying with relief that her husband finally understood what she'd seen all along. My one gift had changed more than just their mortgage situation. The rest of Christmas morning passed in a blur of questions. Dad wanted to know everything about my business, how I found clients, what problems I solved most often, how I'd built such substantial income so quickly. I walked them through the full journey. The fear during early days when clients were scarce and Dad's criticism felt like confirmation I'd made terrible choices. The breakthrough moment when a startup founder whose team was imploding had hired me in desperation. The referrals that followed that successful intervention. That first major client paid me $25,000 for 8 weeks of work, I explained. I helped them restructure their leadership team, implement better communication protocols, and address underlying cultural issues causing constant turnover. $25,000 for 2 months. Austin's voice carried new respect. That's more than I make in 6 months. It was transformative for my business. The founder referred me to other startups. Each success brought more referrals. By the end of year 1, I had a waiting list. Dad studied the presentation book again, really looking at the case studies this time. This pharmaceutical company case. You helped them launch a product on time by fixing their team dynamics. The product development team was in constant conflict. Key employees were threatening to quit. The launch was 6 months behind schedule, which would have cost the company approximately $30 million in delayed revenue. I pulled up the detailed case study on my phone. I spent 12 weeks doing intensive team building, conflict mediation, and leadership coaching. They launched 2 weeks early, and they paid you $80,000 for that. It was worth far more to them. $30 million in saved revenue versus $80,000 in consulting fees. From their perspective, I was incredibly cheap. Mom kept touching the deed, as if confirming it was real and wouldn't disappear. No more mortgage payments, Tom. Do you understand what this means? It means we can actually retire. Dad's voice carried wonder. I can stop destroying my back, doing construction, work I'm too old for. We can travel like you've wanted. We can breathe financially for the first time in 30 years. Because our daughter is extraordinary, Mom said firmly, looking at him. Because the degree you called useless gave her skills that corporations desperately need. Because she was brave enough to pursue her path despite your disapproval. Dad nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke. You're right, about all of it. After breakfast, extended families started arriving for Christmas dinner. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The house filled with familiar noise and holiday chaos. Before everyone arrived, Dad pulled me aside. I want to tell everyone what you did. I want them to know I was wrong and you were right. Is that okay? Dad, you don't have to make a big production. Yes, I do. I spent years telling anyone who'd listen that psychology was impractical. I need to publicly admit I was wrong. For you, but also for me. I need to own my mistake. During dinner, Dad stood and clinked his glass for attention. The crowded dining room quieted, all eyes turning to where he stood at the head of the table. I want to share something important, Dad began, his voice carrying across the room. Many of you have heard me criticize Claire's decision to study psychology. I called it impractical. I worried she'd struggle financially. I was vocal about my disappointment when she chose therapy over business school. The room grew uncomfortable. Several relatives shifted awkwardly. My Aunt Karen, who'd always defended my choices, sat forward with interest. I was completely and utterly wrong. This morning, Claire gave Beth and me an extraordinary gift. He held up the deed. She paid off our entire mortgage, $75,000, eliminating 8 more years of payments. Gasps rippled through the room. Uncle Mike's fork clattered against his plate. Cousin Jordan actually said, "Holy shit," before his mother elbowed him. She did this through her corporate psychology consulting practice, the work I dismissed as useless. She's built a thriving business that generates more income annually than I made during my best construction years. Dad's eyes found mine across the table, bright with tears and pride. And she did it while I criticized her constantly, while I made her feel like her choices were failures. She persevered despite my lack of support and judgment, and then she used her success to give us financial freedom we desperately needed. He raised his glass. To Claire, who taught her stubborn old man that success comes in many forms. I'm sorry I was too blind to see it sooner, and I'm more proud than I can express. The room erupted. People stood, raising glasses, some crying, others calling out congratulations and questions. My cousin Jordan, who'd been considering dropping out of his theater program due to family pressure, was openly sobbing. Aunt Karen came around the table to hug me fiercely. We always knew you were special. Now everyone else sees it too. Uncle Mike, Dad's brother who'd always been skeptical of soft sciences, approached with unexpected humility. I gave my son similar advice, told him business over psychology. Watching this makes me realize I might have been wrong too. It's not too late to tell him that, I said gently. He's only 20, still figuring things out. Maybe I'll encourage him instead of steering him away from what he loves. These small shifts, these moments of reconsideration in other family members, felt as valuable as the mortgage payoff itself. One gift creating ripples that extended far beyond my immediate family. Dinner continued with a completely different energy than any family gathering I remembered. Instead of being the disappointing daughter, the one with impractical dreams, I was suddenly the success story everyone wanted to understand. Relatives asked about my work, how I'd built my business, whether I was taking new clients. Even my grandmother, who'd once told me I should have been a teacher like normal smart girls, approached with questions about corporate consulting. After dinner, Mom found me in the kitchen, away from the crowd. She pulled me close, holding on like I might evaporate. You've been carrying this weight alone for so long. Building your business, dealing with constant criticism, planning this surprise. That must have been exhausting. Sometimes it was, but seeing Dad's face this morning made everything worth it. He's been different since Thanksgiving. Quieter, more introspective. I think walking out that night affected him more than he admitted. He realized he'd pushed too hard. She pulled back, studying my face with the intensity only mothers possess. Thank you for forgiving him. For giving him the chance to be wrong and make it right. Not everyone would do that. He's my dad. Of course I would. But privately, I acknowledged how close I'd come to cutting him off entirely, to letting the rift widen until it became permanent. The mortgage gift had forced a reckoning that might not have happened otherwise. That evening, as family members began leaving, Dad asked me to stay longer. After everyone else left, the 4 of us sat in the living room. Mom, Dad Austin, and me. I want to understand your business better, Dad said. Not just what you do, but how you knew it would work. How you had the courage to pursue it despite everyone's doubts. I walked them through the full story, holding nothing back this time. The fear during lean months when clients were scarce and rent was due. The night I'd almost given up and applied for corporate HR jobs just to make Dad happy. The moment I'd realized that his approval, while desired, couldn't be the foundation of my career choices. There was a specific moment, I admitted. About 18 months into my practice, I had 2 clients, both small projects that barely covered expenses. You asked me at Sunday dinner when I was going to get a real job. I looked at Dad. I went home and cried for 2 hours. Then I got angry. Then I decided to prove you wrong or die trying. Dad winced but nodded. I remember that dinner. I thought I was giving you a wake-up call. You were pushing me toward giving up. But instead of breaking me, it motivated me. I spent the next 6 months working 18-hour days. I took on projects other consultants wouldn't touch. I solved problems people said were unsolvable. And it worked, Austin observed. Eventually, once my portfolio was strong enough, once I had testimonials and measurable results, the corporate clients came. They didn't care that I was young or relatively inexperienced. They cared that I could solve expensive problems. I pulled up my current client list on my phone. These organizations lose millions to employee turnover, workplace conflicts, and poor leadership. I save them money by fixing the human elements they've ignored. I never thought about it that way, Dad admitted. I saw psychology as talking about feelings. I didn't understand it was solving business problems using psychological principles. Most people don't. They think therapy when they hear psychology, not organizational consulting. But companies need people who understand human behavior at scale. How to motivate teams, resolve conflicts, build healthy cultures, develop effective leaders. And they pay extraordinarily well for that expertise, Austin added, his tone carrying new respect rather than jealousy, because the alternative costs them so much more. The conversation continued late into the night, covering territory we'd never explored before. Dad talked about his own abandoned dreams of architecture, given up for the immediate income construction provided. Mom shared her regret about leaving nursing, how she'd loved patient care but felt pressure to stay home. Austin quietly admitted he found finance boring, that he'd chosen it for security rather than passion, and wondered daily if the trade-off was worth it. Watching you succeed on your own terms makes me question everything, Austin said. You took the risk I was too scared to take, and it paid off in ways I never imagined possible. Before I left, Dad walked me to my car. The night was clear and cold, stars visible in the winter sky. The mortgage gift is life-changing, Dad said, his breath clouding in the cold air. But the real gift was showing me that my definitions were too narrow, that I'd been limiting you and myself by refusing to see beyond conventional paths. You weren't completely wrong, Dad. Security matters. Stability matters. I'm building those things too, just differently than you expected. But I tried to force you into a mold that wasn't right for you. That was wrong, regardless of my intentions. He paused, looking up at the stars. Your mother wanted to stay in nursing. Did you know that? She loved it. But I pushed her to stay home, said family needed her more. I used practicality as a weapon to control her choices. The revelation surprised me. Does she resent that? She says no, but I wonder. Watching you refuse to let my judgment define you makes me wish I'd given her the same freedom to choose her own path. Maybe it's not too late. She could volunteer at hospitals, take refresher courses, find a way back to nursing somehow. He smiled sadly. Maybe you're right. Maybe watching you will inspire both of us to reconsider what's possible. We hugged in the driveway, the embrace longer and more genuine than any in recent memory. I love you, Claire. I'm sorry it took a $75,000 lesson for me to really see you. I love you too, Dad. Merry Christmas. Driving home through empty streets, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of proving myself had finally lifted. My phone buzzed at a red light. Text from Austin. You're kind of a legend, sis. Thanks for showing me what courage looks like. Then, Mom, your father hasn't stopped talking about you. Happy tears, proud tears, grateful tears. Thank you for giving us more than financial freedom. You gave us perspective. And finally, Dad, proudest moment of my life. Not because of the money, but because of who you are. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I pulled into my apartment complex, looking up at the modest building that had been home while I built my dream despite everyone's doubts. Next year, I'd probably buy a house, invest more aggressively, continue building the security Dad valued, but on terms I defined for myself. The psychology degree he'd called useless had given me everything: purpose, impact, financial success, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd stayed true to myself despite intense pressure to conform. It had let me give my parents freedom while proving that unconventional paths could lead to extraordinary destinations. Sometimes the most practical thing you can do is trust your impractical dreams. Sometimes usefulness wears unexpected faces. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't just money or security, but proof that they were wrong to doubt you, delivered with enough grace that they can accept it and grow. I carried my purse inside, leaving the empty presentation book in the car. Tomorrow I'd start planning for a new year filled with clients who valued what I offered, a family who finally understood what I'd built, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your worth regardless of others' opinions. Tonight, I'd sleep knowing that the useless degree had built something beautiful, something lasting, something undeniably, extraordinarily valuable.